Okay, continuing on from the last video, the singularity is known as this theoretical event where artificial intelligence becomes self-aware. It becomes conscious of its own existence. And in this way, it becomes alive. It's born. In the same way that we are born with a consciousness that is capable of perceiving a reality. And I was sort of joking about how it's like we're experiencing a conspiracy theory singularity through Donald Trump in the same way that he has been subconsciously encoded with all of this stuff surrounding the artificial intelligence singularity. Project Stargate, all of that stuff. I won't go into it again. But at the same time, through that character, they have essentially made everyone self-aware of conspiracies. They've made everyone self-aware in some way about what's really going on behind the scenes. They've made people self-aware on at least some level that there's something not quite right about everything they've been told. And everybody is exposed to this in their own way. I mean, if you're listening to me right now, you're way down deep into all of this stuff, right? So you're very familiar with it all. But other people are just living a quote-unquote normal life, and they've only been exposed to it by hearing other people reference it in some way. Some mainstream source references something that Donald Trump said about a conspiracy theory that's been debunked. And so they hear about it, they learn about the theory, but they're not considering it having any credibility. But slowly over time, as Donald Trump and his agenda was proliferated into social media, that contact became more and more likely regarding regular people. And obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic, which was just as planned as 9/11 in New York in 2001, exposed people to this on a level that they probably weren't prepared for in terms of what people were saying on the internet. And this is both real people and shills, and a lot of real people follow the shill's lead and they repeat information that is not correct. Regardless, a lot of people are exposed to these ideas that they had never considered before. And in this way, they're becoming self-aware, right? It's a conspiracy theory singularity. And we know that all of this stuff was planned to be released during this time, but it's just interesting to think of it in this way where now, with the hindsight of the Epstein files and all of those revelations in our minds, we can see, oh wow, now it really is reaching the climax of this event horizon, pulling everybody into it, right? Sucking them into this black hole singularity of understanding what's really going on in the world in some way. Because no matter what side of the political spectrum you are on, you now believe that there are elements in the government that are engaged in human trafficking or some kind of sex trafficking, pedophilia. Everything you thought you knew about what was really going on in this world has been shattered because they orchestrated the propaganda so elegantly in a way where now, yes, they might have someone to blame in a way that is not accurate for it, but they're still seeding the idea around them with everybody they interact with, including their own mind, right? They have this new perception of the world. And that happens to everybody at some point along the way. Whatever event it was doesn't really matter, and that will be different for all people in terms of when they interact with the internet and come across an idea that they had never heard before, and then they go learn more about it. But that's kind of the whole point of this chaos magic that is taking place through all of these spells, where now ultimately people don't know what to think. I think that's the more common refrain you get from an ordinary person who's like, look, I don't even know what to think now. I don't know what's true and what isn't. And you can see how things like what's going on with Netanyahu are tying into that, where people don't feel comfortable even stating a fact about an image now, because it could be artificial intelligence created. It could be some computer program that made that. I can't be confident that's real. That will all tie into digital IDs and making sure that everything is tracked and traced. This is the purpose of the blockchain. Do you remember the whole thing with NFTs, that whole scam that was going on? Well, that was sort of seeding a similar concept where these digital images will be marked on the blockchain. And eventually people will be clamoring for this type of thing because they won't know what to believe. And things will revert in a way back towards the mainstream institutions that have the perceived credibility to be able to say if something is real or not. And all of that stuff will be in official channels that are in some way, shape, or form a function of a blockchain in terms of what they will be in the future. Where, look, we have this image, it is verified. It was taken here at this time, and it's immutable. We can prove it. Here it is. Because everybody's tapped into the same system in conjunction with their identities being tied to these activities. So the photographer who takes the picture is stamped in there as well, right? It's in their digital record. And this is one of the many ways that people will be begging for this kind of thing eventually, because no one knows what to believe. Well, what's real and what isn't? Because as usual, it's the same people pushing this stuff who are controlled opposition, because that's their job. Their job, like Donald Trump, is to get all this stuff out there so that it can be responded to eventually. And they can implement all of this stuff because there will be a reason for it that has grown out of control. It's beyond anybody's control. Now we have to do something about it. And this is why Donald Trump, in addition to all the other stuff they infused into him, is the conspiracy theorist president. Part of his design was to mainstream conspiracy theories. And you can see from the titles that I have up here, just searching Donald Trump conspiracy theories. I mean, look at the titles of the articles. Trump's Long History with Conspiracy Theories. A Guide to the Many Conspiracy Theories Donald Trump Promotes. Q-pilled Conspiracy Theories Trump and the election claims. On and on it goes. And there is actually a Wikipedia page dedicated to the conspiracy theories that Donald Trump has promoted, and it is exceptionally long. It's unbelievably long. Donald Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, has created or promoted many deceptive or disproven conspiracy theories to a degree unprecedented in American politics. And then they go through and list them all. First, it's by political opponents, and they have the Obamas, the Clintons. This is just the people. Claims about clandestine opposition, the deep state, QAnon, Antifa, anarchists. And then it gets to Russian interference. All kinds of allegations relating to Russia and Ukraine. Then there's the election claims for all the elections that he was involved in. Claims of corrupt science, medicine, and statistics. This is a lot of the COVID-19 stuff. Global warming. Vaccines. I mean, he has covered it all for almost every conspiracy theory that you can think of. Great replacement conspiracy theory, quote unquote. Look at this. On and on it goes. On and on it goes. And the thing is, so many of these quote-unquote conspiracies have truth to them. He's not pointing at something that is entirely untrue, but that's the game, right? This is the game they're playing where they put this stuff in a context that makes it ridiculous and unbelievable. I mean, I'm only halfway through this page. Now we get to the conspiracy theorists endorsed by Trump. Donald Trump has encouraged individuals who spread conspiracy theories. Had dinner with Kanye West, Alex Jones, Paul Joseph Watson, Laura Loomer. So many people. And then they have the actual conspiracy theorists in the second Trump administration. Part of him being the conspiracy theorist president is then in the second term, they have these self-identified conspiracy theorists actually in the American government. I mean, the director of the FBI is Kash Patel, who was heavily involved in QAnon. RFK Jr. And then there's a couple other sections where you can follow up. But this is what I'm saying. I mean, this is a gigantic list of conspiracy theories and people who promote conspiracy theories that Donald Trump is amplifying into the mind, getting coverage of it, getting their name out there, getting the ideas out there. Because it's the conspiracy theory singularity, right? They are intentionally making people self-aware of this stuff because that's how they are destroying the old system to bring in the new one. They had to expose themselves somewhat in order for that to transpire, in order to weaken the concept of nation states and just the whole way the thing functions in general. And to do that, part of Donald Trump's role was to be the conspiracy theorist president, where he would bring a lot of these ideas into official government channels so that they had to be discussed and they had to be addressed by the press. People slowly become aware of all the ideas. A lot of the early 9/11 truth movement, a lot of the early conspiracy content just eventually fused with MAGA and QAnon and Pizzagate. And in that way, it was subsumed within the Donald Trump machine. And so he came to represent all of that stuff. And through his actions, he then discredits all of it at the same time. While he's making everyone aware of it, while he's creating that singularity, that point of no return where everyone realizes that the old world is not working anymore. The old system doesn't work. We need something new. And like I was saying about the images, eventually they beg for it. Which is tying into the whole concept of him being the personification of 9/11. He is the controlled demolition of the old system. The two terms are the two towers, metaphorically speaking, and that's taking place in your mind as well. In all the ways that I've discussed in prior videos, but this is more practical, right? This is taking place in terms of just your perception of the world in general. So in other words, along those lines, Donald Trump is the ultimate form of controlled opposition. And then there are all the clones of him that do a similar thing. And I wanted to get a little bit into that just to give you a great example of how this functions without getting into any of the more sordid details, right? You don't have to do a lot of research or deep dive, which I'm not saying you shouldn't do that because that's useful. But just in this case, very simple. I'll show you an example where you don't need to think too much about it. And this is relating to Theo Vaughn, who is a comedian. And I'm just going to play this.
I have spoken about this before, but I do have a lot of uncomfort about America's relationship with Israel, the Israeli political leaders. That's what I mean. I believe that group it just feels like a satanic regime. It feels like they just want to cause pain.
Okay, as you can see on the title as well, he comes out and says Israel feels like a satanic regime. Now, it takes 2 seconds to do a search for Theo Vaughn and Jared Kushner to find this image of him having dinner with Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump. Likewise, this is a photo of them hanging out at a different point in time. You can see they're all wearing different outfits, and you have Theo Vaughn with Ivanka and Jared Kushner. As of March 2026, Jared Kushner is acting as a key non-governmental negotiator for the Trump administration in the Middle East, focusing on strengthening the Abraham Accords, navigating post-war Gaza, and negotiating with regional actors. He is instrumental in proposing major redevelopment plans for Gaza, including new housing, while maintaining close ties with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. on the one hand, Theo Von is on his podcast saying that he feels like Israel is a satanic regime. And then on the other hand, he's having dinner with somebody who is the Israeli regime, right? Jared Kushner is very closely tied into the Israeli regime. He's closely working with Netanyahu as it relates to all this stuff going on in the aftermath of the Gaza war. It doesn't get much easier than that, okay? He clearly is being told to say this for a reason other than the fact that he really believes it. Because if he really believed it, he would not be having dinner with Kushner, okay? Any ordinary person who had a firm moral stance on something would know who Kushner is, what he does, and who he's associated with, and they would say, well, this doesn't fit with my firm moral stance. I won't be having dinner with them, right? Okay, so this is the easiest thing ever, and it explains the whole internet ecosystem and just the whole world in general. Everyone is controlled opposition who has any kind of platform. That's just the way it is. Don't get mad at me. People come to me all the time and send me comments like, what do you think about this person? Do you think they're a shill? The answer is yes. You don't even need to send me the name. Okay? They're all shills. That's how the game works. So the next question is, why? What's the purpose of having him say this if he really doesn't believe it? Well, it's the same reason that any of these people say any of the stuff that they do about Israel. This is from Michael Savage. Owing to the vicious Jew hatred on X, I am turning off all comments. Under the guise of MAGA and America First, and fostered by the lies of the new Reich under Carlson, Candy, and Nikki, he's referring to Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and Nick Fuentes, and even Megyn, all rational discussion has become impossible. I have never seen anything like this since reading about the Jew hatred in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. This is from March 3rd, 2026. This is the whole agenda summed up into one tweet. That's why Theo Von is saying what he's saying. He wants this idea out there, or it's his job to put it out there. Don't read too much into me saying he wants it, okay? It's just an easy way to say it. Obviously, I'm referring to the handlers that control him, because all of these people sell out to those handlers, and they do what they're told. But it's just easier when I'm speaking to say he, right? But anyways, these people are doing their job. They are promoting this idea that anti-Semitism against Jewish people, and Israel in particular, is on the rise. And it's getting close to what was going on in Nazi Germany. And as a result, something must be done about it. And we're in the early stages of this still. I'm sure there is more coming that's going to make this even more obvious. And that will tie into the digital ID stuff. Removing anonymity from the internet. Starting that with age verification laws to protect children. Starting that with IDs required for pornography sites. Putting your actual identification on the internet to get into a site, which is the precursor to just having an ID that you need to log on to your ISP. And your ID is then tracked everywhere you go. Everything you post is your name. And eventually that's stamped onto a blockchain type setup as well. And then everything you've ever posted is immutable. Everything you do is immutable, right? And then there is no possibility to speak freely anymore, because with the way they have set up cancel culture, you are canceled if you say certain things, and it can never be denied once it's stamped onto your digital ID that you've said this thing, and then, you know, you lose your job and you lose everything. You're blacklisted. That kind of thing is already going on in China. They just don't report about it. Candace Owens says something similar. Yes, we are ruled by satanic pedophiles who work for Israel. Everyone needs to digest that fact now. Pray and prepare yourselves to continue this fight against who are working to protect them in government, media, and church. This is the synagogue of Satan we are up against. Candace Owens also says, it was not a mistake Israel is required to mass murder children because they worship Baal. Trump does as he is instructed to by Jared Kushner and Bibi Netanyahu. So you have Candace Owens directly calling out Jared Kushner as it relates to this anti-Israel sentiment. You have Theo Vaughn having dinner with Jared Kushner and his wife Ivanka Trump, and then you have Theo Vaughn and Candace Owens on a podcast together for 2 hours. Do you understand what I'm saying here? All of this is scripted. All of it is coordinated in advance. They are saying what they're supposed to say because it ties into this conspiracy theory singularity that I'm referring to in this video. Okay? They're blasting it out there and making this stuff known in a certain way so that people are aware of it and can't deny it, which then ties into the eventual solutions that will come in to censor it. You have to make people aware of this stuff so that they support the censorship, because it will be used to blame whatever happens in the future. This rhetoric will be blamed for something. And it's actually similar to how 9/11 worked in terms of the subconscious propaganda that they programmed into everything, where when those 2 planes hit those 2 towers on that morning in New York, all of the stuff that had been put into the minds of people through media in a subconscious way was pulled forward. That altar flipped forward in response to the scenes, and it made it more believable. People didn't resist as much as they otherwise should in that moment. Hey, what's going on here? That's the magical aspect of it in terms of the sorcery behind it. You prime the mind to accept the trauma. And that's what the purpose of all of that propaganda was. It's not synchronicity, okay? No, they did that very intentionally so that people accepted the official narrative, which was then used to do all kinds of things that they had planned for centuries, including symbolically kicking off this ritual where the mind would fuse with artificial intelligence through the screen, okay? 2001, A Space Odyssey. The Birth of the Star Child. Well, part of getting to that phase of the birth of the Star Child in the mind is the self-aware recognition of conspiracy theories. Because within the conspiracy theories are the truth about what's really going on in this world and what has always been going on. It's just people like this on the screen distort that and make it ridiculous by design. People can respond with things like, she needs to get hospitalized urgently. Why is the clavicular dude everywhere I look suddenly? I mean, I know why, but, come on. Why is this guy everywhere all of a sudden? Nick Fuentes really helped spread his name. I wouldn't know about clavicular if it wasn't for Nick. And again, this is just simple promotion. This is simple marketing. It's how the game has always been played. It's just we're seeing it in a different light, where characters come onto the scene through the internet. And in the past, before all of this was set up in the way that it is now, an ordinary person would come on the scene on the internet. They would just start a channel or whatever, and then maybe they get a little popular for putting out good content. And you assume they're a real person. Well, that changed a long time ago. And it's now these fake people that follow that same path to make you think they're real. And they get put in the spotlight in a reverse way, where the mainstream press figures promote them and get them into the collective mind in this way. And then the mainstream organizations write articles about them, and they become a part of the established narrative. That's when the New York Times is doing articles about you. When you reach that stage, when you're getting your funding behind the scenes from people like Peter Thiel, then eventually you come onto the scene in the New York Times, GQ. Nick Fuentes, Andrew Tate, and other right-wing influencers filmed singing Ye's Hail Hitler at Miami nightclub. You can see all of them here, all with the same handlers, having this very scripted interaction so that they can write this headline. Because this headline ties in to, we haven't seen anything like this since Nazi Germany. People are openly doing it. Interestingly, clavicula is a Latin word meaning little key. serving as the diminutive form of clavis, which is key. And then in medical Latin, it is used to describe the collarbone. So they have this backstory where they say that he picked that name because the collarbone is a prominent feature that Luxmaxers use to identify somebody that, looks like an alpha male, or however these idiots spin this stuff. I don't know. But because it means little key in Latin, it also has this tie-in to the lesser key of Solomon, where in Latin it's using clavicula for lesser key in the actual title. And for those of you who don't know, this is a grimoire on sorcery, mysticism, and magic, where a lot of the quote-unquote New Age stuff traces its roots to publications like this without them knowing that. Indeed, this is a part of the body of literature that is the Star Child that Kubrick is showing you at the end of that film. This is Rosemary's Baby, right? This is the birth of this thought form coming to life in the collective mind in a way where it's the new religion that everyone is practicing. It takes over from everything else. It's occult sorcery out in the open, right? Everyone practicing this without understanding that's what they're doing because it has all kinds of new terms and things associated with it that aren't this. But this is the source of it, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden and the serpent, right? This stuff comes from snake eyes, in other words. Because it's all about you becoming your own God and acquiring power to manipulate reality around you and bend it to your will, which is not what you were designed to do, okay? That is what you are told through these things that you are really supposed to do. And that's why all of these traditions view Satan, quote unquote, as the good guy, because he, quote unquote, liberated humans from God's prison. That's the Gnostic philosophy that underpins the whole thing. And it's interesting that clavicular is a quote-unquote Luxmaxer in terms of how that relates to transhumanism in the same way that the LGBTQ thing relates to it, where it's conditioning people to accept body augmentation as just the natural state of affairs that we should all be seeking. We should all be seeking to change our physical appearance into its highest form, and naturally the idea of being immortal merging with technology would be the highest possible form in this thought process. So these are little things where you're indoctrinating a whole generation of young people to believe they can choose their gender and get a surgery that will alter it, change them into something else. And eventually that primes successive generations into accepting the idea that, yeah, I should modify my body in any way that it's possible. And right now it starts like cavemen with them beating hammers against their cheekbones to make themselves look more angular, like the prototypical Chad would look. I mean, it's all so ridiculous, but that's the state we're in, right? It's like the other young kid, Togi, who is out there just promoting the most degenerate behavior possible to a whole generation of younger people who think, well, I guess I just need to take a bunch of steroids and gamble my way into getting rich. Like, that should be my whole purpose. I mean, it's the very definition of narcissism, you know, this idea of staring at your reflection and lusting after some perfected form that will reflect back at you eventually, seeking that out over anything else. Like, if you get to that point, it will somehow give you any kind of meaning that's worth anything in your life. But it makes sense, right? Because we have been cut off from that which created us in this society. The whole design is to cut you off from that, or give you fake versions of spirituality that people like this likewise promote. At the same time, they're programming your mind with debauchery. They tell you they're turning into a Christian. Give me a break. That's what Togi's doing. No, no. Well, I don't believe you. Because all of these people are created as characters before you ever see them. Okay? Their rises are completely artificial. And the whole point of them doing what they do is to convince you to lose your soul. Just like them. So it makes sense that he would choose the name Clavicula because people like Clavicular are keys, little keys, that unlock your mind into accepting these things coming into it.